3, 2, 1. Fat man claps like a seal. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen?
Don't say something funny right before we start.
I just said something very interesting right when I did our sync clap there. This is Rich and Liana, and this is episode 11. See, I actually knew what episode of this podcast was, and that's amazing that I did, because I actually had to bang out 2 of them last week because I was behind, and there were some people, understandably, that were annoyed on the Patreon. But I'm the one. You can't blame Liana for that, because I'm the one that does the editing on my end. Yes, fat man claps like seal.
I had to make a seal noise. I had to get it out of my system because I was like, what?
Because we sync up before. What I do is I do a clap, because it's how you sync. Because I'm recording audio in like 14 different places right now, so is Liana. So I was like, fat man claps like seal. And right before I started, that's what we did. So this is episode 11. We actually have some serious stuff to talk about this week, so now we're all giggly. It's kind of the weirdest episode to start off laughing like that. But this is episode 11. I think I said that 5 times, of the Rich and Red podcast. And just as always, guys, to let you know, we do have a Patreon for the podcast. We are trying, even though it's funny now, because I guess our show's getting a decent amount of traffic, Liana. I'm actually getting like sponsors from Podbean coming to me like, hey, you want to talk about us on your show? And I'm like, no, not yet. We're trying to keep that from happening, so we could be as uncensored as possible, because
or it could just be, well, we get a sponsor to piss them off. Oh well.
Yeah, so
we'll become sponsor hostile instead of sponsor free.
we'll attack all of our sponsors as we get them.
We'll do the Howard Stern method. Just fuck it. Belch during the promos. God,
it worked for him, man. It's so weird. He is like an anomaly in the entertainment. Like, everything that he did to start off, like, is not what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it still worked for him, and now he's worth over like $500 million. But anyway, that depresses me. With our Patreon, we're still doing the same thing right now. For $1 a month, you could choose whatever you want to donate or support us with. But for $1 a month, you get early access to the video version that we're recording right now. Trying to hold back a burp as I say this. And for that $1 or $2, you also get a downloadable MP3, a high quality one, at least like 192 kbps, that you could put on any device that you want to. So you actually get a decent amount for not much money at all. Think about it. If you do $1 a month, is $12 a year. That's not even lunch, unfortunately, nowadays. So there you go. We're trying to keep it sponsorship free. If we can, great. If not, it is what it is. Most, I know like the completely unnecessary podcast that Pat the NES Punk does. He has sponsors in it, and he's still, he's trying. He's doing good, man. He has a great show. But anyway, Liana, I have 2 interesting stories. But Liana has like a nuclear bomb that I knew nothing about, because I have been in internet limbo hell, which I'm sure you guys see me bitching on Twitter about. So it has something to do with VidCon, Sargon of Akkad, just mix this formula together, and Anita Sarkeesian. Talk about a powder keg. I'll let Liana take over from here as I sip my coffee.
Yeah, it was like a powder keg mixed with like a big like waterfall of tears kind of thing, which gives you kind of a mushy mess, and that is essence at the end of the day what it actually is. But what basically happened was Anita Sarkeesian was part of a panel at VidCon. Now let's give her some credit. She normally doesn't do off-script public appearances, so good for her on that. But Sargon of Akkad and some other people, apparently somebody from the Honey Badgers and Chris Ray Gunn and a few other people were in the audience, and they were talking about, it was a panel about online harassment, or they were talking something about online harassment, but Anita points to Sargon, calls him one of her biggest harassers, calls him, reports vary, it's hard to make out on the videos whether she called him a shithead or a shitlord, probably a shithead, but called him a garbage human. And it went from there. In the same panel, the moderator removed 2 people from the question line for asking questions that Anita Sarkeesian didn't like. One of them was, do you actually believe what you say? The other was, why don't you talk about harassment against men online? And, these things were dismissed as stupid questions, and they just removed the guys from the line. I don't think they are stupid questions. I have gotten far more hardball questions I got more hardball questions today when I did a live stream earlier. But yeah, that's sort of the tone of the panel in general. And, you know, Anita seemed kind of shaken. I think anybody who is sort of more, you know, kind of confident and calm wouldn't dismiss something in a public forum with cameras rolling as a stupid question. That's a stupid answer.
Yeah,
but,
even if you think it's dumb, responding to it still always makes you look better. That was a horrible way to handle that.
And they're like, you know, exceptional claims require exceptional evidence. Why is it a stupid question? If there's a reason she says that, explain it. You know, I've done that. I've said things are foolish, but I explain why, and mostly it's a, what kind of result did you expect to get from that? I can't, that's not a question, that's an accusation. I don't think these work.
You give a Joe Budden response. He'll answer your question, but he'll make sure you knows you're an idiot for asking the question as he's answering it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if people come at me, I respond in kind, but that's not the same as just refusing to answer the question. I was actually curious about how she was going to answer, do you actually believe what you say?
Especially when she's been proven wrong countless times, that like called out for using like evidence that was complete bullshit.
Yeah, and this is what frustrates me about her, because I mean, she's been on Colbert, she's been on ABC News, she's got some pretty major media stuff under her belt. She's got a pretty impressive CV that way, and she's still terrible at feeding that stuff. Those are opportunities to pivot into something you want to talk about, right? And come out seeming like $1 million. And I mean, I'm sure, you know, there's things that you've wanted to talk about that you're not especially interested in the drama, but there's a point you can make using this example. You know, you take the news story and then you provide background, and that's what makes you an interesting personality that people want to follow. I was just really surprised that she is still so jumpy and easily rattled. And, you know, it sounds on the tape like people are saying, oh, people cheered her, but it sounded like either it wasn't a very big audience or like it was the minority of people in the audience who are actually applauding. A lot of people found her treatment of a guy who, like him or not, was just sitting there. I mean, some could claim that him being there at all was a provocative act, but Sargon, you know, no matter how you feel about him, he's a provocateur. But so is Anita.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they are part of two parts of the internet that feed off each other, this ongoing war between them. And you know, he was on Twitter kind of taking the piss out of the whole situation, kind of concern trolling victims of abuse and victims of harassment. Like he was kind of aping her approach when these things happen, which some people took as being an asshole. I admit I found it kind of clever. I don't find what he does funny all the time, but I thought this was all right, dude. As somebody on the other side of the fence, point made. You know, I've done Sargon's stream twice. He was quite pleasant. His audience called me a lot of words connected to body parts that they'd like to set on fire and do other unspeakable things to.
Of course.
But, you know, that's the internet, right? It's not something we like about the internet. But the thing is about doing that, you don't have to sign up for that all the time, and you don't have to look at the chat. I like looking at chats when they're there because I don't like having things screened. I want to see what people are saying, and it was informative, you know, because my chats are not like that. I kick idiots who just say nonsense, but he's not a guy who I think is especially interested in turning attention to somebody else via harassment. He wants his views out there, and because he thinks he's right. Agree with him, disagree with him. I think he actually is sincere in his viewpoints. And so labeling him a harasser, I don't know if I can get behind that. It's bullshit.
Everyone uses that card, and I've had that card used against me too, because, and now granted, the person that I refuted was a much smaller YouTuber than me, but the claims that he was making about me were pretty outlandish. And I come from the old school part of YouTube, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, of, it was kind of part of the status quo to respond to people. Okay. Yeah. I don't do it as often as because I can't now because of the following on my channel. It's annoying, but they always use when you either win in an argument or even if people don't feel that you won, if you go back at somebody just through a response in a video, it's, oh, you want to send your people after you want to have your audience. No, I don't want I wish my goddamn audience. I even say in the videos if I ever talk with someone, leave them alone. Don't do anything, because as soon as you go there and tell this person to, kill themselves or whatever, it makes me look like a piece of shit, and it kind of undermines my response.
Yeah, I don't know why people do that. I think they get
it's that tribalism ape instinct thing that humans have.
Well, it's also, I think they're trying to be a super fan by, look, I'm such a great fan that I'm going at the... No,
you're not you're being a dumbass.
Yeah.
And then it's an excuse that like Anita Sarkeesian could use, or my said person could use, saying, oh, your trolls aren't going to... You want your trolls to... No, we don't want our fucking trolls to come after you. We wish they wouldn't, so we could just have a debate and have our intellect or our opinions speak for us, not have the psycho Fred sit there say that he wants you to go kill yourself or he wants to kill you.
Yeah.
No, I don't want that.
I don't understand why people resort... Well, intellectually, I do. Like, I know all the reasons given for it, but...
They're stupid fucking reasons, but yes.
Well, at the same time, I'm like, how unhappy and powerless do you have to feel to take that step? And I kind of feel that way about this VidCon drama as well. Like both these people, both Sargon and Anita, they're doing very well. They're, they get a lot more traffic than I do, not as much as you do, but I'm like, can't you just be happy that you're both successful?
Actually, I would actually say Sargon gets more traffic than I do. But anyway,
for now, right? I mean, what happens when this stuff calms down? But I wish them well. I want everybody to do well. I want there to be enough traffic and money and all that stuff for to go around. But it's just like, you're doing well. And according to, the people with him that made a video about it, they said they just were sitting there. They just wanted to see what she had to say. I don't know. I think that by being there, they were kind of looking for things to catch her up on. But that's the reality of doing these panels.
Oh, I will let you know right now. If I was at VidCon, I would have been sitting there. And I've made... Oh, absolutely. And I've made many very colorful videos on Anita. Again, look, I even got shit when I came out, when I found out that some of her death threats were legitimate because they were backed up by the FBI.
Yeah.
Because I was the one calling her out for a while thinking her death threats are bullshit. I'm like, wow, for the FBI to go knocking on people's doors, some of them must be legitimate. Anita, I'm sorry. As much as I don't agree with you on shit, and I think you talk out of your ass, I don't agree with people threatening your life. Okay?
Yeah. So you would have gone.
I would have gone, and and it wouldn't even been a passive aggressive thing. I would be like, look, I want to see what this woman has to say live and in action. Like when you... And
that's the point of having these panels, to see what people are actually like in person, unscripted, when questions are open. And I just think they did her no favors.
No, it did the exact opposite.
Well, jumping in and saying, oh, take this person out of line. She's not capable of saying no comment or I decline to answer herself. Like, isn't she the one who thinks the damsel in distress is so bad? This is very bizarre marketing.
Why would you decline to answer? It was the questions you just said to me. They weren't. You shouldn't decline. First of all, you shouldn't decline to answer anything, in mostly anyway, in that situation, because you're there for that reason to kind of, I guess you could say, clear your name, and that's doing the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, it's so funny because in the same day this broke, a guy in my regular Friday feedback segment I do asked me, why did you say, and he quoted this thing that just didn't sound like me. He quoted a video, but you know how somebody spits something back at you and you go, this doesn't sound like something I say. I take your word that you're, putting it back there as accurately as you can, but this isn't something I'd say. And then somebody went back and got the actual quote. And yeah, it was different than
context
what
is
I'd
key.
actually said. Yeah. And it was about, and that's what I first said. It was like, I that doesn't sound like me. And then we were able to have a discussion. It was on, you know, the men's rights movement and my assertions that I think while there are some legitimate grievances and we have to talk more about men's issues, a lot of these are about social supports and psychological supports, not de facto rights. And this guy interpreted that as me saying this is all in men's heads. And it's like, no, I actually in the video used the term legitimate grievances.
People thought, people love to do that, to take something you say, either make it black and white or take it out of context to make it sound like you're saying something completely different.
Right. And I think the unfortunate thing is I think this guy actually believes that I'm this piece of garbage that just hates him. And I don't want him to go away with that feeling. I think he probably did because he wasn't interested in hearing any answer other than, you know, I hate you and I hope you die. Like his mind is made up. I don't know why he even bothered asking, because his follow-up was, why did you lie about this thing that happened, you know, 3 years ago that I didn't lie about, but people are insistent. But, you know, I bothered to talk to the guy for myself. I said, look, I am happy to talk to you. I am happy to explain these comments. Saying why did you lie isn't a question, it's an accusation. I didn't lie. That's all I can say. Yeah. You know, but that is an answer. That's a stupid question. Get out of line. It wasn't a satisfactory answer for the guy, but at least the audience was able to see that those were some pretty harsh statements. And yeah, it's very frustrating for somebody to go, you know, first of all, why did you lie is a loaded question, you know, and
it's a peppered question too. So even if your response totally, you know, proves that you didn't lie, right? People already going with that colored mindset of saying, oh, you lied. You know what I mean?
It's, you know, that old, when did you stop beating your wife thing? Yeah. It's not a question. It's an accusation.
It's psyops.
And
it's psyops.
Like, yeah, there's no winning there. Like I say, I didn't lie. Oh, you're lying about not lying. And it's just this vicious cycle. It's unproductive. And that's pretty much what I told him. That's not that hard to do. And I don't understand, since I think I have more media, like more on camera time than she does, but I've never been on, I've never been on Colbert or anything like that. I think the biggest thing I've been on is Attack of the Show. I was in the background of the Tonight Show at Comic-Con once in a Leia bikini, but that's neither here nor there.
So was I.
You know, I can handle that. Why, with all the money she's raised and all the talk she's given and all the speeches she's done and all the consulting she's done, is this still such an issue?
Because it's all controlled and contrived, and when it's off the top of the head, she can't handle it. That's exactly it.
Yes, but I think there's something deeper causing that. And this is the thing I think is actually worth talking about, because
what do you think the deeper thing is? I'm curious.
She seems terrified. And there's nothing.
And still at this point, she seems terrified?
Yes.
Oh,
she
God.
seems very off her game and very on guard and very, like, you know, that sort of huffy, like, whatever. I mean, first of all, the way it's shot with them all up on the stage looking down at these poor schmoes, and they're all like, that's a stupid question. And it was like a scene out of a Lindsay Lohan movie, right? Like, they just came across as the plastics, and that's not how they see themselves. Sorry, that's a Mean Girls reference, guys. You probably haven't seen the movie, but, you know, it was a very much, we wear pink on Wednesdays. You're not a plastic. You can't wear pink on Wednesdays kind of thing. Stupid, cliquey shit. And I don't think that's what she intends. I know that's not how she sees herself. And that's a defensive reaction, right? Like, you only turtle like that. You only go into a defensive crouch like that if you're scared.
Yes.
And that tells me, so I got to back off the mic a bit, I'm peeking, but that tells me that the people around her handlers, her so-called support system, are not actually supporting her. She feels so vulnerable out there that she can't answer those tough questions. And that's a management problem that shows that the people producing her, the people who are managing her, are just not doing their jobs. And she always seems like she's very close to a nervous breakdown.
Well, yeah. Well, on top of it too, she chose this path, and she should be able to hold her own to a degree. in situations like this and not have to have someone with a piece of paper in the fucking background saying, okay, this is how you should respond. This is what you should say. She's been in this game of being a self-victim long enough that she should know how to fucking handle it. But
that's the thing about a victim mentality, though, isn't it? Right? Like, there's so much about the portion of the women's movement that she's a part of that encourages unnecessary fear, unnecessary victimization, and that's the stuff, you know. Full disclosure, they think I'm bad for women. They think the content I do actually harms women. But, you know, my attitude is you lead from the front, not from the back. And you can't tell girls to be leaders. You can't tell other women to create content and run for office and found companies and all that stuff if you're not willing to stand up, take the hits, and just get in there and be as big, as bad, and as badass as the boys. You know, there's only one way to success, and that's through, right? Crying into your Cosmo drink, you know, your overpriced soda with booze in it is not gonna get you ahead. It's not gonna make you money. Squaring your shoulders, putting your head down, and pushing through, you know, that's the Howard Stern model that I actually model myself a lot after Howard Stern, because, you know, when I first started, it was the same thing. She's obscene, she's disgusting, she's a whore, she's a slut, you know, it's all that stuff. But I just kept pushing through, and eventually you find people that identify. But you can only do that if you stick to your guns and kind of go, no, you're not going to shout me down. Nobody shouts down Howard Stern, right?
I know. I think the thing is, too, is the response that she got from denying questions is showing chinks in the whole feminist frequency armor. Because I know that show is, Tropes, whatever the hell the name of her show is, it's done, and she went on to something else. Because I think a couple of years ago, she would have been able to get away with not answering questions easier than now.
Possibly.
I think it's showing that now it's just kind of like people are like, yeah, I'm over you. Okay, like you've been doing the same fucking self-victimization shtick now for, well, let's say 3 years. Yeah. We're not buying it anymore. Answer the fucking questions. We've wanted the answers to these questions from you now for almost 3 years. Now it's time to answer, and you still want to answer. We're going to call you out for it because we're sick of it.
And they're really not difficult questions. I mean, there is a potentially valid answer to why don't you address harassment of men. I don't agree with it, but I know the talking point is that, you know, women face a unique type of harassment and are more likely to be subjected to severe and prolonged harassment than men are. If that's the issue she wants to pick, if that's what she wants to focus in, like laser focus, that's her right. I disagree that that's effective. I think that the only way to take down harassment of women is to take down harassment of everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, because how do you expect a guy who's being told, I'm going to fuck you up, motherfucker, I'm going to break your arm, I'm going to break into your house and do these things to your family, how do you expect them to have any sympathy for, you're see you next Tuesday, or whatever, die, bitch. You know, how do you expect anybody to have sympathy that this is horrible and terrible when they're going through it in, themselves to a degree? You don't want to end up in a fearful mindset. You don't want to end up in a powerless mindset. And I think that's why a lot of other YouTubers have this very strong reaction, because people do not want to be afraid. They don't want to think this way. You know, they've been told that most of these threats aren't credible threats. I'm fortunate enough to have a friend in law enforcement who is a professional interrogator. And so I can send him stuff and say, should I be worried about this? And he says no, or he says, well, watch this part. That's good peace of mind. Mm-hmm. You know, I wish everybody had access. If people could just submit threats to something on YouTube or something like that, and somebody with training could say, this is credible, this is just some Yahoo blowing off steam, I think we'd all sleep better at night. Because these having to make that choice when you don't have the training for it is part of the stress. And I think that unfortunately with this whole, sadness porn, with this harassment narrative, it's making stuff that shouldn't matter very much. It's taking stuff that's just an annoyance. Nobody says it's not annoying. Nobody says it's not draining. But something being annoying and draining, that's like a whine in your fluorescent lighting. It's not to the level that, oh, this is serious and I have to do something about it and I have to look over my shoulder when I'm outside. These are very different, on the hierarchy of needs. Those are very different parts of the pyramid. And
she's made much ado about nothing for years. Yeah.
And you could say much ado about nothing. The other way you can interpret her response is that it's a symptom of PTSD called hypervigilance. That you jump at shadows, you associate bad stuff with other bad stuff. I mean, I don't deny that she believes that she was in peril at that, Utah thing. There's disagreement about whether in fact she was, but in her mind she was, so she canceled the appearance. I think that because of the circles she's in, because of the way they handle this stuff, instead of, the way anybody in news does or anybody in other forms of entertainment do, where we all sort of get around and go, yeah, it's not fun, find a way to laugh at it or find a way to process it. The people around her are encouraging her to perseverate on the unpleasant stuff instead of focusing on the positives. Like, look, you have fans, you have people cheering for you. Like, can you imagine any pop star, anyone in a boy band, somebody like Ariana Grande or Taylor Swift or Katy Perry? I've seen horrible stuff said about these public figures. Could you imagine if every little thing got to them? It would be grotesque.
Well, I think the thing is the people around her, that's her calling card. That's her trademark, is to find issues with things where the issues don't even exist. Like we talked about it when the first episode this we did with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Mm-hmm. Perfect example. It's like, there's nothing even there. Like, how could you find sexism with that? And that's the thing, is that that's the way she has to perpetuate her business, is to constantly look for things to be a victim of. And if she doesn't, what is she? That's her trademark. Her trademark is being a victim by trade.
There's also a
victim for hire.
Yeah, but I've also, I said this before, she is a provocateur. But it doesn't seem like she's doing that with intention. Because somebody who is deliberate about that stuff, they don't then go, you don't freak out. You recognize, I say contentious stuff. And that upsets some people. Why? Because I believe in free speech and I believe that we should talk about these things. Disagree with me. Don't disagree with me. Keep it civil, please. Thanks. But, you don't get all these newspaper articles about you complaining about incivility. It's unfortunately people aren't taking the uncivil nature of our discourse seriously enough at that level. And so now people have to artificially inflate it into peril, into it's causing harm for people to pay attention. But unfortunately, a lot of that attention is now derision. And this concerns me about gaming because, one of the things I do is I talk to a lot of gamers. I just try to collect their stories. I'm a former reporter, I like people's stories. I like that part of the job, and you do it less and less now, which is why I got out of it. But you hear people, and one of the things you hear over and over and over again is that they care about gaming, but they've got a lot of trauma and a lot of trust issues in their background, not just with the games media, not just with publishers, not just with these unsavory business practices and accusations of shenanigans in the press, but going back to childhood, and these scandals are tripping every one of those buttons that people have. And I'm really careful when somebody comes and it's like, why did you say it's all in my head? Well, that tells me a lot about the thing that they're insecure about. And if you're with it, if you're paying attention and not having your own emotional reaction, you can recognize that and respond accordingly. She's not doing that. So for all her alleged edumacation, there's something missing there. There's that, pardon the pun, consciousness of, look, people aren't talking about issues here. They're telling you what they're scared of themselves. That's precious. They're sharing, even if you don't like the way they're doing it. Show some damn respect for that. You know, I think she'd get a much better result with gamers, even though she clearly doesn't play a lot of games just for the enjoyment of them. I think she'd get a much better result if people felt like that was a part of, you know, her so-called analysis, if that makes any sense. It's just people are tired of being told they're bad without having a chance to go, no, this is what I actually do think, and this is why I actually do play these games. And you know, the number of people who are said, I feel like a piece of my childhood is being ripped away from me with stuff about, you know, Princess Peach and the character from Star Fox and things like that. I solely
blame her for a lot of the political bullshit that goes on in the gaming industry now. I solely blame her and Feminist Frequency for everyone trying to shoehorn in how with Call of Duty World War II, they're not going to use Nazi symbol, even though it's based in World War II, and they're going to have, you could be a black Nazi, even though there was, far as I friggin' know, and I'm pretty sure I'm confident of this, there was no black Nazis. You could be a woman Nazi, you could be, well, there was women Nazis, but they weren't in the battlefield as far as I know. Everything has to be politically correct, and I blame her for that, and in the end, you know, I'm all about equality. This has nothing to do with, I'm all about, I don't care what race you are, what gender you are, whatever the case may be, I'm all about equality. But when it doesn't fit into something, it doesn't make sense artistically, it's stupid. And I blame her for having like putting developers' backs against the wall and making them make genders and religions and sexual preferences in games that just don't fit or need to exist being put in there.
I think sometimes too, I mean, we have to remember that, yeah, games are stories. Yes. Games are also toys. And there's this element if you get in a game and you turn into that 8-year-old with, you know, the action figures and you're going, pew, pew, see me, you know, all that stuff. And you go into this very childlike, not childish, childlike, very childlike, very vulnerable place when you're playing this stuff. And it's a good exercise, I think, of being in touch with yourself, this id thing that comes out in gaming. And to shame that, I think, can actually be quite psychologically traumatic for a lot of people, because the whole idea of, you know, these wartime games and everything like that is you're going and doing things in various ways you can't do in the real world. And you know that. You have no desire to do it in the real world. And people are layering all this false meaning and false intention of it.
Absolutely.
Of course people are going to have a bad reaction. Jesus, you're shitting in their Kool-Aid.
Yep.
Like, you're just dropping a big turd in the punch bowl. And it just seems so odd. It seems so lacking in self-awareness. And that's why I go back to, she's just running as fast as she can. She really isn't aware of her impact. She isn't doing this stuff with intention. She's freaking out constantly.
I think her and the people behind her are just trying to milk the movement dry before it becomes, because it's already teetering on irrelevancy. It already is. She's not the same draw as she was even a year ago, you know, and I really think they're just trying to get whatever they can out of this movement while they still can, and then, you know, move on and be parasites to some other movement, because I'm sure the people that she works with, I'm sure the company that she keeps, I'm sure have that mindset. They're financially parasitic and then go on to the next thing.
Speaking of going on to the next thing, maybe we should pivot here.
Man, see, you're good with these things. See, you're good. Liana's getting better with the segues than I am.
Zing.
Man. So this one has to do with
mic drop.
With me, man, that was, yeah. Oh, yeah, or drop that thing. If I don't want to drop my mic because it's too expensive. Anyway, I'll metaphorically drop it here. Boom.
He blinks. That's creepy.
So, if you're wondering why I haven't made that much, which one thing I've noticed, by the way, with this new internet connection, Liana, I've had zero issues with Skype telling me that, even though telling me that the connection's bad. None.
Yeah, there's been none on my end either. That's really interesting. Yeah. I've been feeling for you, though, this week because I've been dealing with some computer stuff myself, but it is not of the magnitude of people ripping apart your house that you have been dealing with. My God, it just sounds so stressful.
And I'll say this about the apocalypse. When I upload videos, it's okay. I do okay with ad revenue. Obviously, I can't tell you, everyone knows how that goes with the whole contract thing. But the nice thing when you had issues like this come up with YouTube is when you couldn't upload, it wasn't that bad. There was still the residuals there. Now it's like, you upload, okay, you make some money. You don't upload, it's like, bing. It's like, oh God, I can't even rely on residual views with anything. Okay, I see how this is. But anyway, so my internet, I'm pivoting towards doing a lot more live streaming on my channel, which I'm sure, I know Liana's noticed, and I'm sure you're noticed. You have to, evolve with how things change in the climate, whatever. That's not the main issue. So I was like, I need to get better internet because I've been having issues with my streams. I've been having issues with other things. If I'm downloading say I'm downloading a Steam game, or was anyway, if I was downloading a Steam game and streaming, something would get bottlenecked. I'm like,
oh yeah, forget it. Yeah, that's just not happening. That was
ridiculous. So I'm like, So I go down to Fios in the beginning. The initial guys there I spoke to weren't great. So I was like, you know what? Everyone says Comcast isn't that bad. They were bad. They give them a shot. So I'm like, fine. So my fiance and I, we go to, there's a Comcast store basically that's near me, 15, 20 minutes away. And I said, look, I'm going to start doing, I told them what I was doing. If I just I just want fast internet, I just want to be able to, watch porn in 4K. Which actually, no, that would have been still another reason why she should have been more honest with me. But look, 4K porn's a lot of bandwidth. But anyway, so I'm like, look, I'm going to be streaming in 4K. It's part of my job. I need fast internet, both uploads and downloads. I remember I did say that. Okay. She's like, all right, we have 200 megabits per second internet. So this is the point where I was like, okay, maybe I pulled a Homer Simpson and I just went, woohoo, and started running around the store and didn't pay attention. But my fiance was with me too. And she dots the I's and crosses the T with shit like this. So she asked too. I found out this later, but she asked too, look, is that uploads and downloads? And she said, yeah. So whatever. Okay, fine. A couple days later, the technician comes to my house from Comcast. Really good guy. I have no issues with him, okay? Just because I'm throwing mud, I don't throw mud at everybody. Just because you all work on one team, there may be good guys on your team, there may be dumbasses on your team. I won't throw mud at you if you're the good guy. So he was a really nice guy. So he gets the internet hooked up, did a really good job, did excellent wiring, which Fios ended up using. And first thing, whenever I get new internet, or just in general, sometimes if I'm streaming, I always do a speed test. I go to speedtest.net. Or test my speed. There's a whole bunch of other speakeasy, blah, 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 blah. And I'm actually getting faster downloads than they promised. I'm going to hit the test my speed, 240 down. I'm like, damn, they only said 200. Nice. Then I go, then it does the download, then it does the upload. And I'm like, okay. So, it takes a second. And it's 12 megabits per second up. I haven't had speeds that low since 2004. But here I'm thinking, all right, I'm sure it's symmetrical. I'm sure maybe it just needs a firmware update, blah, 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 blah. So the guy goes upstairs and does some other stuff with cable. So I'm going to wait because he said the router had to reboot 4 times because it downloads and update boots, downloads and update boot. So it did that. Then I download. So then I go to speed test again. I'm like, all right, now I bet the issue solved. I'm sure I'm getting 200 megabits per second up, blah, blah, blah. Nope. It's 12 megabits per second again, upload. And I asked the guy, I'm like, this doesn't seem right, man. I showed him too. He's like, oh no. He's like, that's the fastest that we offer.
Yeah, that's standard for most plans.
I'm like, what? I'm like, this is a downgrade from what I had before. And I was like, I'm not mad at you, but she told me, and I was pissed off at this point. I was like, look, I'm not mad at you. And then I called my fiance. I was like, did you check I was pretty sure she told me that, but did you check to see? Maybe like I said, I pulled a Homer Simpson and I got excited, but did you? She's like, yeah, I asked her, is that 200 megabits per second upload and download? And she said, yeah. And I'm like, oh God. I'm back in 2004 again. You can't, for everyone, you need at least 30 megabits per second upload speeds to stream in 4K.
Yeah.
You ain't streaming. Even like 1080p 60 is like 8 to 12 or 8 to 10 or something like that.
10 minimum.
So, the guy, it was funny. The tech was like, he was actually like, look, man, I'm sorry. She should have been like, even if my fiance didn't ask, she should have been more clear with me, and I should have saw a red flag because there was a guy there who had to like fix her paperwork and she was making mistakes. So
but there's nothing in writing?
I'm sure there was, but that's the thing too. You ask the questions, you get the answers. You think you could trust the person working behind the counter to give you the answers, which that I will say that is my fault at my end. But you're also supposed to be able to rely on the person who's selling you the product to have knowledge about the product to get you the right thing.
And I mean, here, it's right there. It's a pamphlet. It's like, these are the plans. This is what you get in the plan. If they don't have something that basic, that's not your fault.
Well, it's interesting, too, because a lot of internet providers down here do that. It was so funny. There was a commercial for me. They're actually okay. I actually had Cablevision, or Optimum, they call themselves now. We have faster download speeds, or we have faster speeds than Fios does. They had a commercial. I'm like, and I'm thinking, now that I know better, I'm thinking to myself, what are your upload speeds, though? You're not saying that. It's so funny how they conveniently leave out things like that. And the best was, and this is the thing too that annoys me. This is why net neutrality not being a thing in the States is a big deal. Is their customer service is horrible. And on top of it too, I don't even know net neutrality would necessarily fix this. But a lot of times in most areas, it's only like a duopoly. There's only like two options. Oh, you don't like the turd? Well, here's this diarrhea over here for you. And it was so funny when I called them to cancel. They were like begging me to stay with them, which they all do. Fios did to me too.
Yeah.
But then she goes to me, oh, we may not offer the speeds now, but can you wait?
Oh,
I'm like, no, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm already back on Fios. And this it actually goes into something bigger too. This is the problem with our government being bought by corporations. There's no reason why we shouldn't have 10 different options everywhere we live to have. There was actually a story that came out, speaking of Comcast, that just shows that there was a town where there was a small internet provider. So what they did is they actually, instead of trying to compete, Comcast tried to buy them out first. Instead of trying to buy them out, they cut their wires. They destroyed their network. It basically made the company implode. And now that's dirty. And now that small company is suing them. And now we never did anything. Yeah, you did. You're shitty. Yeah. Yes, you did. You couldn't buy them out because the small internet company was like, no, we want more money than what you're asking for to buy us out. So Comcast was like, all right, if I can't buy you, I'm just going to fucking destroy you. You know what I mean?
That's like tactics from the 1930s before there were like labor protections.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you have a corrupt government that's bought out by... Why do you think that net neutrality is on the chopping block again? Why do you think it is? Because you have a Jet Pie who used to be a lawyer for Verizon. He was probably put there by Verizon. He probably paid his way, or Verizon paid his way to get put there because they want net neutrality gone so they can stifle their competitors and do things like virtually cut cables and get away with it.
Yeah.
And... it just made me think, I'm like, man, this horrible customer service. Now, maybe she was just an idiot. I'm sure, or maybe she was on commission hoping for an extra commission sale. I don't really know how she would have gotten away with that. Obviously, I would have figured
both. Out. Yeah.
An idiot that thought she could have gotten away with it and get extra commission. But it just made me think that part of the reason why we are where we are in the States anyway is because of all the corruption and the lack. There's not enough oversight. People hate regulation, but if there was more regulation, there would be more competition here.
The thing is, we do have more regulation up here, but it's a joke. Like, it is such a fix. And they do these hearings and they have to offer these things, but they go in there every year at their hearings and they cry poverty and they make all these things that sound really good and say the sky is falling every year. And the people on these committees, they know some stuff. They're not complete idiots, but they don't, they're a few steps above laymen when it comes to really understanding the potential of the internet, what you can do. And it's so bad here that because everything's run fiber optic, here. Other companies like TechSavvy and these smaller ones, they actually have to rent space in the pipes from the duopoly we have up here. And
oh God, that's so shady.
They had, because otherwise they have to dig up and put in their own, their own companies, because the two main providers of the cables are the telephone company, Bell, and the cable company. And there's a couple of them, but one's significantly dominant in every region. And so it really is, because they found out a few years back that cable is actually better in some places for internet, and phone fiber optics are actually better for television. And so now both offer both. But that was a big fight too. These companies, they have very good lawyers and they're very motivated. And the problem isn't so much the system as it is any system with people is corrupt. The problem is the public isn't being effectively informed because the news has been neutered. When you have these issues, news now, I've actually started watching MSNBC for my cable news background sound, because I figure, hey, if I just, I'm painting or cleaning or something like that, I might as well get smarter. But, on CNN, it was, here's what one talking head said, here's what this other talking head said. It's battle of the pundits. There's no trusted third party going, okay, we're going to make sense of this for you now. So it's just buzzword salad. And, it's getting stuck in people's intellectual teeth. And that doesn't do anybody any good. People tune out because it sounds like a whole bunch of bullshit. Because it is a whole bunch of bullshit. There's no facts. Like, nobody is drilling down and actually getting to the bottom. The analysts aren't analyzing. And so they abdicated to the internet where there's no quality controls. So who do you trust? I end up reading The Economist practically cover to cover every week, because at least I trust that they're, they get read by some pretty big business types, so they have to be accurate. And it's a very different experience reading, because it's broken down by part of the world, and they go through the different government challenges in each part of the world, and they're just like legit hard on everybody, but there's very little emotion. It's very straight prose, and they really get down into everything from net neutrality to the waste in prison systems to, Brexit, to this, to that. And it actually, you walk away feeling like you have some perspective on the issue, not just, here's what the Republican and the Democrat spinmeisters are telling you, or up here, the NDP, the conservative, and the liberal spinmeisters are telling you, oh, by the way, the Green Party is going, hello, we're still here. We really have to have news go back to news instead of this constant campaign cycle we seem to be stuck in.
It's not news. It's more so, can't think of the word right now. It's propaganda.
Yeah.
And the scary thing is that these
dueling propaganda. Yeah.
The scary thing is that these companies like Comcast, they have a lot to gain and a lot to lose, because the internet is almost like virtual oil.
Yeah.
Everyone needs the internet, even if they're not going on the internet like you and I are. They need the internet for something. So they know there's a ton of money to be made. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Actually, this is the former owner of a small internet service provider in Texas is suing Comcast, accusing the giant telecom company either by negligence or purposely destroying his business by seizing his customers. They cut his damn. It was Anthony Luna. He was the owner of Telecom Cable LLC. They cut his cables, and now they're denying that they did it.
See, that's awful. That's just that is illegal. Just catch them.
And if they get away with it, that just sets a terrible precedent.
Oh, I think the precedent has been set at this point.
Already,
I mean, we are living in the age of, if you're rich, you can do anything you want, and if you're poor, sucks to be you. Get rich. It's crazy. That we live in an age where politicians are just saying, "Oh, I didn't know you couldn't try to influence federal investigations."
It's amazing, man.
And I believe them. I believe they really didn't know, because if you spend any time around very rich people, they're always trying to get special treatment. That was the big eye opener, because I would not dare have the chutzpah to ask for some of the things that I thought it was an American thing at first. It was funny that, because, you hear, Americans are more outgoing, more kind of brassy, sort of more service oriented. And it's true. The service in restaurants is much better overall in the US. Your guys' service economy is much better. But it was that the people that we spent time with in the US were, 10 percenters, if not 1 percenters. And there is a very different expectation to that. It's, they expect a manicure and a butt powdering. Like, this idea that people give you a towel in the bathroom. Like, all right, fine, you're creating a job, but holy crap, man, that poor Mexican guy is standing in there having to smell everyone, the deuce everybody drops all day. That's literally a shitty job. My God. And it's what can I get? Can I get this little freebie? Can I get this little freebie? And it's all, I matter now. Because I have enough money to bend the rules.
Money, especially in the States, it's everywhere too. But money is power here, and I know, guys, like, Rich, you had bad customer service. What does this have to do? And on top of it too, I'll say this. I learned a valuable lesson. Even if you're told something from a sales rep, or even if there's a sign at the door telling you you're going to get offered a service, hey, you're going to get 200 megabits per second internet.
Yeah.
Ask questions about it, because there probably is some red tape to it, or something in between the lines or in the small print that they're not telling you. The reason why it's a bigger thing than that is that because this is what happens. You get shitty customer service because of the fact that these companies, like, where else you gonna go? I mean, luckily I did have somewhere else that was substantially better to go, actually technically to go back to. I got lucky, but there are some people telling me, like, it was so funny when I was complaining on Twitter about it. There were people like, okay, I have shit internet here where it's 10 megabits per second down and 2 megabits per second up, or I have shittier internet here. And these were in some places in the States too, where it's like 5 megabits per second down, 1 megabit per second up. They're like, they're like, cry me a river, Rich. I'm in it worse. But that's the thing. They don't have any other options. It's either they go to shit A or shit B, and that shouldn't be. And the reason you get crappy customer service and crappy connections, because they're like, what else are you going to do? You have nowhere else to fuck. You either have no internet or you have us, and you pay us out the ass for your internet.
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate in Canada because they put these massive fiber optic networks in the ground in, like, I don't remember if it was the 60s or the 80s or something like that, but this is when governments thought ahead and said, okay, we're going to spend money now, and everybody's going to yell at us about waste now, but we're future-proofing our infrastructure. But that was a government kind of corporate hybrid policy that is actually quite useful now, because you can't just string wires everywhere with the way Canadian winters are. That's what happened to our power grid. And now it's costing us billions and billions and billions of dollars to upgrade it. And I mean, Canada is we're like a clothesline of a population, right? Like, the bulk of our population lives right on the top of the US border. There's not a lot of density further up. So those people up north wouldn't have the TV, the, internet, all that stuff. I've got a friend in Vermont. She has to get her internet through satellite. Because she lives literally on the side of a mountain. That's hard not to do in Vermont unless you're in a city. But she's on the side of a mountain. Cell phones don't even work in her yard. You have to kind of go down the hill a bit to get cell service. But that's the only option offered, because it's just not worth the money to these companies, because it's not a guaranteed service like, say, 911. You have to have 911 service. It's exactly what you said. Now, they have pretty good internet, but they pay through the nose for it because it's all through satellites. And then, like, if you were on satellite, if it was cloudy, you couldn't scream.
What's their upload speeds? Not to get technical. Do you have any idea? Because it can't be that good. Uploads, I know, through satellite are shit.
Their uploads they don't do a lot of uploading, so that doesn't matter. She's like downloading games and YouTube and stuff like that. So it's adequate for them. I mean, the whole thing is, her dad wants to watch his sports He wants his boxing matches, stuff like that, and it works perfectly fine for that. But yeah, I mean, that's a concern for me, because my big thing about the internet, net neutrality aside, I think that's very important. But I think that the internet should democratize content creation in a way that we're really at risk of losing. The idea that people from anywhere in the world, if you have a cell phone and you have a webcam and you have the internet, you can become a content creator. And if you've got something people want to watch, that's all that matters. And I feel like we're losing that because, they're doing VidCon in Anaheim, they're doing E3 in California. All these companies are consolidating in the Palo Alto, San Francisco area. You notice they're all in California?
Mm-hmm. I was thinking that too. Yeah.
The media companies, I mean, the reason I lost my deal was, the gig I had before with one of these online content companies was nothing I did. I didn't live in Los Angeles.
Geography, yeah.
Yeah. They wanted to consolidate everything in LA because they wanted to bring people in and have people interact in person. And it's like, that's a TV model. That's not an internet model. The reason it's so cheap, the reason you pay people less is they can live places where that money goes further. And this is concerning to me, because as noisy as the internet is, as demonized as it is, all the horror stories we hear, it also is giving people who were very marginalized before communities where they can meet people who have similar challenges to them, and they get support. I'm talking about people who are relatively minority populations, like transgender people, like intersex people, like the one black kid in a town in Nebraska. They can connect, and people can engage with different kinds of music. I mean, this is getting ahead of ourselves in terms of topic, but the high school I went to, those of us that listened to grunge were the minority. The dominant forms of music were hip hop and rap and R&B and reggae, like dance hall reggae was what I grew up listening to. And it wasn't until I became an adult I realized that's actually an anomaly. I was actually in like a bubble, in a niche. But my reality, I mean, we were passing around like Pearl Jam and Nirvana tapes with like photocopied covers. Like nowadays that would be considered piracy.
Yeah.
But this is how we discovered music, and so I kind of had the best of both worlds in that regard. I got to be exposed to Beanie Man and Nirvana and 9 Inch Nails and stuff like that, and Depeche Mode, all through just sharing with people. And the internet magnifies that incredibly, and I think that's something we risk losing if we start trying to make it too respectable, if that's the right word. If we try to make it too grown up.
Even though I still think she was, I don't know we'll see how genuine she was, but like CEO of YouTube said, she said that YouTube is different because people come there for the texture, not for the shine of the content. You know what I mean? Like it's raw, it's gritty. Now,
I want to believe that.
I want to believe that she means it. That's not the way
it's going.
I want to believe that she means that, but I don't think she does. I think that she's beholden to the same paymaster as the rest of the world is.
I'm one of those people that don't like the fancy, big produced videos where, it's just a TV show on YouTube where they have these fancy intros and a studio and multi-camera. That's not what I go to YouTube for.
That's what all the YouTube Red content is. Most of it anyway, if not all of it.
But that's right. So how can they say that people are coming there for texture if their premium content is just TV on the internet? The internet, YouTube is not TV on the internet. YouTube, what I like about it is there's a sense of immediacy, and you don't have to sit there in hair and makeup, and you don't have to be a size 4 to get hired, and you don't have to do, if you've got something to say, you can say it. That's what I like about YouTube.
And what's interesting, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What's interesting though is how this all ties into the same thing, is that whether it be my corrupt government officials allowing there to be internet duopolies and cable TV duopolies, or YouTube pretending that it's still about the small content creators, but it's still trying to get all the polished content, is because they're all beholden to the same paymasters. Everyone, you know, you have NBC, who owns Comcast now, I believe. You know, they want things to steer in their direction. When you have people like me who will call out Comcast, like I'm doing right here, you know, Comcast doesn't want that, so they want to be able to have this controlled, polished bubble. And until another generation, I guess you could say, or until, you know, money gets out of all the political bullshit, you could say that's a totally different topic, though, for another video. Until we get that to happen, this is the way it's going to be. Once things get big and once there's a bunch of money involved, and you're going to have those interests that want to control it. And whether it be large internet companies, whether it be YouTube, whether it be, you're constantly going to have this struggle. And until things change at a government level that could stop you know, where the government is actually for the people and not being bought by these large corporations, we're going to continuously have these fights, and it's really frustrating. It really is.
And it's not even those corporations that are in control, because more and more Facebook, YouTube, those two, they're basically a duopoly in internet advertising. It's like 90%, some ridiculous statistic, 90%, 85% of all YouTube advertising goes through those two services. And they are just battling head to head for video, for community, for engagement, for time spent on it. YouTube doesn't want you leaving YouTube, or at least the Google ecosystem. Facebook doesn't want you leaving Facebook.
Yeah.
And, you know, but they are the ones chasing their tails because of the advertisers. I mean, apparently some of the advertisers haven't come back to. I actually sent my first letter to a newspaper.
There was an article, I just saw that some of them, they refused to come back because they can't be guaranteed that one video that may get 100 fucking views won't have one of their ads on it. Like, come on, you morons, you disconnected fools.
And I wrote to the Wall Street Journal and I said, look, there's a human side to this story, and that is that content creators are getting caught. You know, you talk about business, like these are a bunch of small businesses. There's a bunch of entrepreneurs. People see YouTube as, you know, this a bunch of kids screwing around. Oh, fall off my skateboard. You know, cat videos, things like that. And hey, I love my cat videos. But it's not that. It's, you know, a part-time business for someone like me, a full-time business for someone like you. And these things matter. You can't just suddenly dick with revenue streams the way they do.
They don't care, though. They don't give a shit.
Well, I did read that they are starting to actually get headhunter companies that match. It's what we were talking about before, matching brands directly with content creators. But of course, that's done through the YouTube Red service. And they're not at all transparent about how you become one of those, you know, elite few on YouTube, because I don't think it should be just about numbers. I don't think you should develop your own audience and all of a sudden YouTube goes, oh, here's the key to the executive bathroom. I think they should actually be developing talent. That's the mark of a mature media form.
They won't do that, though.
No, they won't. They won't, because it's not run, because that's how you make money. You make money discovering the next big thing, not continuing to, you know, milk that cow that was reliable for, and we're seeing this. YouTube's been around long enough that some of their stars in media, you got a 3-year arc before you have to refresh your brand in some way. And some people can refresh. I mean, Howard Stern has refreshed his brand about 6 or 7 times in some way, either changing networks or changing the way he does content or adding a segment or picking a fight with some other, you know, giant, doing a movie, putting out a book, whatever. He does something to be relevant again. That's one of the things he does well. A lot of these YouTubers, they don't refresh. I know you constantly are. You know, you're constantly going, okay, we're going to do more live streams. We're going to do this. We're going to do short form, long form, podcasts, whatever. You're very nimble that way, and that's good. But I see a lot of these bigger YouTubers doing the same thing, essentially, they've been doing for 3 or 4 years, only shinier.
And people
and they
get
wonder
sick
why
of
it's not hitting the way it did.
Now, admittedly, I've tried almost too many things, and luckily now that this podcast and the live streaming are two things that are finally working and sticking. You always change your formats and then you go back. I'm like, yeah, because it didn't work. Like, that's what happens.
I did that this week. I tried doing a book review. People weren't that interested. Well, okay, not going to do that again.
I tried the gameplay footage with me standing in front of the screen. And it didn't. I stood in front of the green screen. It didn't do anything. If anything, got a couple less views. I was like, so. And I
don't like that format. I know that was big for a while. I'm glad to see that go. Yeah. I like voiceover stuff. I like stuff on YouTube.
I mean, luckily I found out that YouTube doesn't really give a crap about violent gameplay so long as it isn't like overly glorified like you do if you made a video of every Mortal Kombat X kill and it was all about the fatalities, then that would get demonetized. But you playing Call of Duty, according to YouTube anyway, they don't give a shit about. We'll see if that actually holds up, but that's what they're saying. But yeah, what the thing is too, when they bring over these big, PewDiePie's no longer part of it because of his whole controversy, but when you bring these guys over to YouTube Red, it's not really a draw because their audience is thinking, I'm getting this content for free from this guy. Why do I need to pay for YouTube Red when I already see him on a daily basis anyway?
I admit I don't really understand the whole YouTube Red model.
I like YouTube Red for other reasons. I like how, if I want music playing or say I have videos and I want to listen to them like a podcast, I could play them in the background. Yeah. There's plenty of, I like YouTube Red. I like it a lot. And I'm not getting paid to talk about YouTube Red, believe me. But yeah, the whole thing of, we give you exclusive, overly polished TV shows that no one really wants to watch ain't working. It's not working. They already said, I think I saw a couple articles where they already said that the numbers aren't where they want them to be. Mm-hmm. Which, well, yeah, YouTube. Because
see, you have to take in talent and work with talent and develop talent, not this bullshit creator feedback consultant crap that they just send you a form letter of put in custom thumbnails and all that stuff. A whole bunch of stuff that I think, yes, okay, obviously this matters to a lot of people, but it's a bunch of stuff I really don't care about. If something seems interesting to me, I'm going to watch it, period. And most of my YouTube stuff comes from referral anyway, or subscriber. So someone will refer it, it's word of mouth, they'll link me to something, this guy's pretty funny, or this is really interesting. And I subscribe to some odd YouTube channels. Like one of my favorite ones is this one that's a history of language. Fascinating, like historical linguistics. It came out of the Far Cry Primal stuff I did with the Proto-Indo-European dialect. Mm-hmm. And the guy messaged me saying, can I use this interview? Because I talked to the consultants from the University of Kentucky that they hired for that game. And his content's fascinating. Like, he gets into the languages of ancient Sumer and all this stuff. And it's French language, so I get to keep my ear tuned to French. I don't like losing that. But that's the weird shit I watch on YouTube. Now, obviously, well, maybe not so obviously. I don't think I'm a normal YouTube consumer, but I don't know if you saw that statistic recently. People are watching YouTube for an average of an hour a day. That's way up from what it used to be.
That's crazy, yeah. Because I think people used to just go there real quick for the the quick viral video and just move on with their day. Now it's actually part of their entertainment. Yeah. And the thing is, getting back to the advertisers on it, they always feel safer with the more family-friendly channels. But you know who watches advertisers of the more family-friendly channels on YouTube? Kids. You know who doesn't have the money for a Lexus unless their parents are very wealthy? Yeah. Kids. So who are you putting those ads towards? An 8-year-old doesn't care about Starbucks in most cases.
And those are precisely the advertisers as well that didn't come back. And I don't know why they're, focusing on families. I mean, women, the thing about women consumers is women are what's classified as a power influencer for companies like Essie Johnson, any Procter & Gamble, household cleaning products, cereals, anything like that. Because women still do a majority of the household shopping, although that number's dropping slowly, women define brands not just for themselves, but for their, significant others and their kids.
That's very true. I can tell you that firsthand.
Yeah. And that's who at least television advertisers are now interested in. And that's because they're power influencers. Their impact, if you can reach that consumer, it's at least a factor of 4. So your return on investment is, and it's generational, right? I mean, when I still buy Dove products because my mother had that bar of Dove soap and I didn't even think about it. Mm-hmm. You go out and you start doing your own purchases. Well, you don't know fuck all about what you're doing. You probably know which brand of terrible wine and cheap beer you like, but laundry detergent, dish soap,
you don't know anything about it. You
buy what you saw at home. And so, Disney is one of the few companies that effectively market to families. It's very hard to market to families. Most people go, well, we're going to go for that 18 to 24 male, because 18 to 24 males are impulsive and therefore easy to brand. You got, still impressionable.
Which is why I think that the gaming industry, even though they know it's an older demographic that mostly consumes their products, still tries to cater to that age group, because they rather, even though it's a smaller demographic for them, they rather cater to them because it's easier to get them to buy their shit.
That's right. Well, it's more socially acceptable, right? Like, I think part of the huge thing that gaming has to overcome right now is the social stigma against games. The same way that, heavy metal concerts tend to be male dominated. Well, that's just because women don't think that heavy metal concerts are for them. I love me my metal. Pop shows are more young girls. Why? Because guys get made fun of if they want to go to an Ariana Grande concert.
Yeah.
It's all, what are your friends going to make fun of you for? And I know I've talked about this before. I talk about, I hate girls' nights. I hate bachelorette parties. I hate anywhere that is predominantly women, because it's, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a video game analyst. What? So you're like,
people still don't have any idea what the hell I do. Yeah, it's like,
but
what?
It's always the Valley Girl voice comes in, like, you what? You play like video games all day, and you like that? Like, I feel I'm at the beginning of the Sir Mix-a-Lot, like, oh my God, Becky, look at her butt. Like, that's how I practically hear the do starting, and people probably think I'm weird because I start going, I like big butts and I cannot lie in my head just to get through it, because it becomes that mindset. And YouTube's kind of the same way. Now that we're in this, think of the children mindset, kids aren't. I remember the first time my nieces and nephews had Epic Mealtime on, and they made like a candy burger. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, I'm very familiar with Epic Mealtime. Extremely familiar with them.
Yeah, and they were making this candy burger, and so it was a hamburger made it was just candy. It was something like 3,000 calories, all carbs. And the part I was like, oh dear, was they called the rainbow stripe candy, the strip taffy, gay bacon, because it was a rainbow.
Yes, I remember that. I laughed my ass off at that.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, my adorable, 13-year-old, 11-year-old, 10-year-old, and 6-year-old family members are laughing hysterically at gay bacon. What do I do? Because I don't want to be that outrage kind of person, but I don't want to just kind of, because they can get into trouble in certain circuits. Like, I don't want them going to school and going gay bacon, and getting in trouble.
Especially
right?
Nowadays too, yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, why is that funny? Why is this funny? Like, that gay people are just as normal as her. And basically what they told me in their own kid way was that the hosts were kind of like larger than life, and it was like watching wrestling with food.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah. Like, that was the appeal. And then I realized afterwards I'm worried about homophobia when the whole show's encouraging gluttony. Like, my priorities are kind of messed up here, and I admit I didn't connect to the whole thing.
I don't really think that skit necessarily promoted homophobia. It was just like, it had the colors of the rainbow in it, and it was just gay bacon strips, and that was all it was. Yeah, but the thing with I would be concerned what you mentioned is that, you go to the wrong place and you start talking about gay bacon strips, it could be a big problem.
That's what I meant. I was trying to avoid the phone call home.
Whenever I'm around kids, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I don't want to be the reason for the phone call home. I already have had too many like close shaves and bad situations with video games where people pull up a YouTube video, and of course, what's the first thing that comes up in any game video? Something dirty. It's either a dirty mod or something bad. And so, same nephew, the oldest one, was playing Dragon Age Origins, and his aunt pulls up this fucking gay sex scene from the game that he'd never even encountered, because you have to work to get to those things. That's what I like about those games, that they really, a kid who's like, yes, it's an M-rated game, but an exceptional kid can play those games and not come across that content because they're just not interested in that kind of stuff. They want to kill monsters and save the world. And so I've got this person having a complete outrage meltdown in, my brother and sister-in-law's kitchen because I'm exposing their 13-year-old son to gay sex. And the kid is like, looking at me because he doesn't know what they're talking about. Yeah. But this is what we have to overcome to let kids watch YouTube. And YouTube now, YouTube and video games are what anime was for the last generation, what science fiction and things like that were for us, and video games in their own way. It's almost cyclical, but it's the stuff that's theirs. Right? It's cool. Your parents don't know anything about it. It's not their thing. It's your thing. They're using it to form their individual identity. And that's really precious, and it should be protected, because I remember when anime started becoming huge, that was, early millennials. I didn't quite connect to it. And that's how somebody explained it to me, is that this is the kids of science fiction fans, where Star Wars and Star Trek are their parents' thing. They found their own thing. And I'm like, all right, I get that now. And so I went out and I found the things I like. I don't like it all, but stuff like Death Note and Miyazaki, which apparently isn't actually anime, and all that stuff, I do like that stuff. And so at least I can have a conversation with people of that generation about it, so they kind of feel like, all right, you're not looking down on me. And I would think that that's candy to advertisers. Like, advertisers keep saying, we want millennials. Yeah, because you want to brand them Coke or Pepsi before somebody else gets in there. I get it. But you can't do that if you're not on YouTube, Because the days of TV advertisements, the internet has taken over. It's a fact now. They did the numbers. The internet, there's more. Advertisers are paying more to place ads on the internet than they are on TV because they know it's where everything's going. And they can track it more specifically.
So they need to calm their tits down when the occasional, with YouTube's already before the adpocalypse, heavy-handed algorithm people were saying was going too far already, when the occasional video slips through the cracks and ISIS ends up getting a Coke ad on their video. Don't worry, Coke. No one with a fucking brain, even if they have a very simple brain, is going to go, oh, wow, I guess Coke is sponsoring ISIS now. No, you numbnuts. And
that's not what they're worried about, though. They're worried about another story showing up in the Wall Street Journal.
Well, that's what they're worried. It's in Wall Street Journal would love if we went the fuck away, because Wall Street Journal is legacy media.
See, I disagree, because I think that places like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, they are getting a lot of clicks beating up on new media. They are getting a lot of clicks beating up on YouTube, beating up on video games. They are stoking that moral panic for all it's worth, because, they're adapting slowly, but they're adapting. But media, and we know this with cultivation theory, mainstream media is very good at cultivating norms. slightly, it tends to skew a little bit more conservative, kind of mainstream norms, normalizing a viewpoint. And so it can be very powerful with the way it did for, what is it we're supposed to say now? LGBTI plus rights. That's the new LGBTQ. What shows like Ellen and Will and Grace and things like that, that normalized gay people. It wasn't the scary person you saw who kind of dressed funny of the 70s. Now it was just somebody who lives in your apartment building, that funny friend that makes you laugh on TV. And it's still a stereotype, but it's kind of like what the Irish did in the early days of Hollywood. They became the funny drunks instead of the mean drunks, and they re-stereotyped themselves. And so it did a lot, and we've seen this like meteoric advance in gay rights accordingly. Now you're starting to see that, my camera won't focus again. You're starting to see that with gaming. I'm seeing more and more shows because of esports do gaming as kind of a positive. The show Bull, which surprised me because that's a fairly old skewing show. They had a thing at an esports tournament and they were very, very big on games. Like, oh yeah, it's great and it's popular and all that stuff. Every show Matthew Perry does has some kind of EA sponsorship. I have no idea why, but he's always playing Madden or something like that. I think maybe because he's a gamer. But it's starting to happen. But until that becomes like a normal thing and not, oh, here's the gamer who's going to get killed this week, toss his body next to the prostitute, it's not going to get past those gatekeepers, those power influencers. And that's the issue, is if the mainstream media was more responsible about reporting this stuff, advertisers wouldn't spook, because it's not the Coke ad playing on the jihadi video. Because how do you know that unless you're watching a jihadi video? Like, you're telling me your little angel, your 8-year-old, is watching ISIS recruitment videos? If that's true, Mom, you got bigger problems than a Coke ad on this video, Yeah. It's that perceived feeling of, oh, I read this in the Wall Street Journal. It must be an epidemic. This could happen to me. In this age of helicopter parenting. And I think, though, that the Wall Street Journal and places like that are doing that because it's no big conspiracy like some people are making out to be. It is, they want the advertiser dollars. And if it means that shitting on us to get advertisers to be like, look, trust the Wall Street Journal. Don't trust these guys on YouTube because you never know what they're going to say. That's what they're hoping for. That's what I think the Wall Street Journal is trying to do. I don't think they have some big conspiracy where they're like trying to undermine other people's, they're being the thought police. I don't think anyway. I think they're really just like, hey, fuck, I don't want Rich's fat ass getting Coke ads. I want the Coke ads. You know what I mean? That's all I think they're really doing. And if that means they have to smear YouTube a little bit to make that happen, which it did work, so be it. That's what I think is going on. Yeah, I mean, sure, the S.E. Johnsons of the world, that's one of the ones that haven't come back, right? I thought Johnson & Johnson did. I thought maybe Johnson & Johnson. I thought they were one of the first ones that did come back, actually. Maybe. It's one of those kind of, maybe it's Procter & Gamble. I'm not sure, but one of those kind of big pharma masquerading as soap and toothpaste kind of companies. They're hanging back. They're waiting to see how it's resolved. And it's in part because they've had enough bad PR of late. They don't want any more bad PR. I mean, people already know they're pieces of shit. So it's like, we're trying to do it to help our image. No, you're trying to do it because your image is already tarnished by your own fucking doing. That's right. And if they didn't already have bad PR that they were trying to avoid, because you have to remember that these ads aren't placed by the labyrinth of middlemen in digital advertising is annoying. I can't believe it got as bad as it did. Like, that's a big part of the problem, is these advertisers recognized they didn't know where their ads were going. I don't know if there's any way they really can, even if they get rid of all those middlemen, because if YouTube worked on a system where everyone had to manually get ads placed on their videos, it wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work.
No, but I mean, something like YouTube is one thing, but these like ad clearinghouses, these digital clearinghouses, where like people's ads were ending up on politically affiliated sites, whether it be Breitbart or Jezebel or something like that. And YouTube's one thing. YouTube's just this big beast, like this big lumbering beast. But I think that's lazy. You can set up algorithms to not place on, you know, so Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A don't want to advertise on left-wing sites. No problem. They should have that right. You know, other companies don't want to advertise on Breitbart. They should have that right. That is disconcerting because that can get them in trouble. Like if a company like Starbucks ended up with ads on Breitbart, they'd have people furious at them.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds really not plausible in retrospect to go, oh, we didn't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? You micromanage like the design on your coffee cup, the color of the coffee cup, and you're saying you don't know where your ads went? It sounds ridiculous to the average person, even though it's 100% true.
And it's 100% feasible too with how big the internet is. But yeah, to a person who doesn't understand it, who may be like in their late 40s or 50s or older, you know, them, it's like, you don't know where your ads are going? Like, yeah. Because there's hundreds of hours of videos uploaded per minute. They probably don't know, and there's no way they can know.
Well, because they're going through middlemen who go through middlemen who go through middlemen. Like the internet is just so big that you need those way stations. They're trying to maximize money. And because I know I've done meetings with some of these companies that basically they create this content and they buy space on behalf of these other brands that they work with. And that's how they make their money. You got to hustle. It's a tough way to make a living. I could not do it. But it really is. I mean, kids are growing up in this environment, and kids are always more media savvy than we give them credit for. But I almost wonder right now if we've hit a tipping point where there is so much information now that kids are just overwhelmed by stuff. Like, if I was a kid growing up nowadays, I don't know what I'd believe. Like, I have no idea.
The thing is now, when we were kids, I mean, there was obviously a good amount of technology, don't get me wrong. But now it's like everything is right in front of you now, man.
Yeah.
Your computer could get you to anything and anything everywhere you want. And we didn't have that. That's one thing we didn't have, you know. This TV was still TV. You had Saturday morning cartoons, so on and so forth, and to make myself sound old as shit. But now it's like everything is just a click away. Anything you want to see, anything you want to get, anything you want to do, unfortunately, it is a click away. And yeah, it has to be like sensory overload.
You know, it's funny though, because I have an interesting accidental kind of test case for that. My friends, he's the youth pastor at a Baptist church. So they're out in, you know, a more rural area, and they don't have cable TV. It's too expensive. Pastors make garbage money, especially youth pastors. And so they don't have cable. The kids are homeschooled for various reasons, part of which there's no school there, that the son was falling behind and they didn't have the appropriate programs for his education. And so they don't have the day-to-day peer stuff in school. They get it through the church. But they also don't have TV. They watch all their entertainment through the internet, through mom's iPhone. You know, so they have their iPhone games. They have DVDs and stuff like that. So they watch a lot of movies and cartoons that way. But if the internet was really overwhelming children with advertising, I would expect them to be just as trend-driven and I want this as their peers. And it's quite the opposite. These kids get into something they like, and 3 years later, they still like it. And I've never seen this in a kid before. Like, normally it's 6 months, they're into something completely different, right? Whereas, man, they're into some cool stuff. They are cool kids. And all their media is through the internet. So if the internet, and this is relatively anecdotal, but how often are you going to find a kid without peer pressure and TV, right? Like it's interesting. And they're free thinkers. They think critically. They have wonderful imaginations. They're okay, they're 8 and 6 accordingly, but still they're cool little people. And they're products of internet entertainment. So I think that's interesting. It's because otherwise it's hard to separate the internet from all these other forms of stuff we're presented with, and I think TV is still much more likely to cultivate opinions than internet does, in my opinion.
Especially since, I understand there's DVRs, but hell, even the DVRs don't let you skip ads. You could skip ads on YouTube. You ain't skipping ads on television in a lot of cases. I know there's, if you DVR it, there's ways you could get around that. But I'm saying in general, ads still penetrate your brain more, I think, on television, even though more of the spending is going towards the internet because there's just so many more people using the internet, it's still more worthwhile. But when the ads are on TV, they're there, you see them, and they sink into your brain, whereas YouTube, 9 times out of 10, you just skip the damn ad anyway.
There's a lot more embedded advertising on television too.
Yes, even in the shows. Yes, you're 100% right.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that is a lot more like, I always laugh on Silicon Valley when these hardcore tech guys are sitting there coding on Macs,
It's like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah.
I think it's interesting though, in the Big Bang Theory, they have the same computers I do. They're on the Alienware 15s.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
well, and so I think because the writers knew, they wouldn't be using Mac. Come on now, they're gamers.
Well, I think also Alienware put their money into that. Mac decided they were going to go the premium cable route, but that doesn't happen by accident. When they haven't got a brand, because you watch the big shows that don't need that. Shows like NCIS is the best. They have the best fake product labels on television.
Yes.
It is never a branded coffee cup. It is ketchup, nothing. All of it. The snack machines are all generic because people pay to have their brands put into those shows. EA, every time you hear like an EA game referenced on it, EA paid for that. It's
so crazy. And you know what kind of annoys me too? I think it's going to be a 2-topic episode today because we're going into we're going deep in the trenches of this. It started with Comcast, and I don't even know where the hell we are right now. Is that you do a brand thing on YouTube, you need to be like, hi guys, I am doing brand advertising because the advertisers think you're fucking idiots. Yes, I know there's some people who swindled people and they were shady, but it shouldn't be like, I'm advertising right now. This is an advertisement. Did I mention this is an advertisement? It's in the description. It's in the intro of the video, and I'm mentioning it right now. Hopefully that's enough for you. Whereas, a TV show could be like, yeah, I'm playing Madden 17 right now, and that's the advertisement, and that actually works. That's okay, even though you technically are being swindled at that point. But me, it's like
beyond that. In the episode of Bull I was talking about, it was Titanfall was the game they were playing. They were actually playing Titanfall, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's not some bullshit fake game. But they went on at length about how great the game was and how dynamic the gameplay was and how good the matchmaking was, and it was a pitch.
Of course.
And all they say that is paid advertising is a little thing in the credits, promotional consideration paid by, and it flies by so quick because they accelerate the credits now. You blink, you miss it.
Yeah, hey FTC, are you going after fucking Bull for doing that? Probably not, right? Because that's the other thing I hate too, is that YouTubers are looked at differently. I understand we're not the mainstream, but we're almost like we're held to a higher standard with shit like that than mainstream TV shows. They can get away with, this game is so fantastic. We're totally not going to tell you that, even though it's been shoehorned into the script, it's an advertisement, but we're just going to pretend it's not. We're going to have some passing fucking thing at the end. Hey, FTC, why aren't you finding them? But if I don't sit here and tattoo, if I don't tattoo on my fucking man tits that I'm being advertising for this thing, it's like, I feel like I'm going to have to go to Guantanamo for 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's in part, though, as well, because with games and stuff like that, why anybody would be swayed in their opinion, by a free game. I don't know, but it's the FCC rules. Fine, I'm good with transparency. It's more that a lot of people are going out and just buying the stuff, and that drives me crazy. Because if you're willing to go buy the stuff, they are screwing it up for everybody else. Because, movie reviews, if you don't invite me to your screening, I am not reviewing your film. If you don't send me a product, I am not reviewing your product. If you do not give me the tools to do my job, I am not giving you the publicity. Because even a bad review is publicity.
It is. Because there's still maybe people, well, that game may look like shit, but what Liana showed me makes me want to buy it.
The Pirates of the Caribbean movie, the reviews were savage, but they were savage in a way that I think I might actually enjoy the movie, stupid as it is, So there's no such thing as bad press. But if people start undermining that process by being such super turbo fans that they're running out and buying the game and reviewing the game and standing there at midnight, well, I don't blame the game companies for pulling back on these review copies. Why not? If people are willing to buy it themselves, and they say, I bought this myself, like it's some kind of badge of pride. No, the least this company should be doing for you is giving you a free copy. Never mind, I think they should probably be paying the bigger people more than they are. I can't believe how little people sign their souls away for in gaming. It's crazy. But it's more money than they're used to seeing.
Yeah.
And so therefore, the thing about web advertising is the return on investment, if you do it properly, is actually excellent. It's not this one commercial on a TV show that you don't necessarily know if the ratings you're expecting are the, live plus, just straight up live, like overnights, overnight plus 3, overnight plus 7. A lot of the time it's overnight plus 7, which means people are watching on PVR, or worse, on demand, where there aren't any ads. And I don't understand why there's limited ads on demand, because that's a rating. That's somebody watching. Why don't you just run the exact same damn commercials on demand? That would make sense to me, but they don't. There's almost no commercials, at least up here, on the on-demand programming. That's part of the reason I like it. To be completely honest, but it's odd from a business perspective.
It is odd from a business perspective, especially since they can find ways to disable that you could bypass them. So it's not like, it's not like people are like, oh, we're going to waste the time and effort putting ads into these on-demand shows, but you could block people from, they say it, like down here, you're not going to be able to skip the ads in this on-demand video. Tough shit. They don't say the tough shit part, but they may as well. Well, they put ads in. They're just station ID ads. Like, they're just advertising other programs on the channel you're watching. That's how they fill the ad space. Mm-hmm. Which means they don't have external advertisers. Which is strange. Very odd. Because on demand, I watch more shows after the fact. Like, I set them up to record them and watch them 3 o'clock in the morning if I want to. I very rarely watch a show live. Yeah, most people don't. We've become on-demand society, because whether it be YouTube or, recording your shows on TV, or whether you stream, because now you can stream them from the cloud for most of your cable providers, at least down here. Yeah, that's how people are watching. No one, with how crazy people's lives are, no one can sit there, oh, I got to go watch this show at 7 o'clock. You know how many times that would never fucking happen with me? I don't have the time. You know what I mean? Certainly not at 7 o'clock. People aren't home. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Life is so much more complex and hectic than it used to be. Those days of being able to sit down and watch something are far from, they're gone. They're dead. Yeah. Just watching something too, right? Like not watching something and doing something else. Yeah. That's exactly that's exactly what I do. How many times I'm like, have something playing, and like sometimes I'm just envisioning what's going on in the show, which I don't watch that much TV to begin with, but if I do, I'm envisioning what's going on in the show while I'm doing something else. I'm not even sitting there watching it. So those days are gone. But I think we've gone deep into the rabbit hole of this topic, and I think it's going to be a 2-topic show, because we're at close to, I would say, hour and a half, maybe a little over that. Yeah. Do you want to give a shout out to Prodigy though? Yeah. We probably should, because that's dated. Shout out, we're going to make it a big topic, but I don't want to make this, like a 3-hour podcast. I was Prodigy of Mobb Deep, okay? I have been a fan of Mobb Deep since 14 years old. I remember it was this guy Ryan who was in my freshman class, and he told me about Mobb Deep. He's like, "You ever listen to Mobb Deep?" I'm like, "No, I never even heard of them before." He's like, "You should listen to the infamous Mobb Deep." He's like, "The album's crazy," and I got it, and that was it, man. Mobb Deep was my high school, whether it be Hell on Earth, HNIC. When Prodigy kind of went more so solo later on, even though I did like the first day HNIC, I wasn't a fan of a lot of his solo work. But I mean, even though there was Albert Einstein, that was an amazing album. But he passed away. What was it? I'm looking at the calendar now. 3 days ago. He suffered from sickle cell anemia for about, I think, his whole life. They said it was a big issue for the past 20 years. I think Havoc, who was his partner, said it was a big issue for 20 years, but he suffered with it his whole life, and he just passed away recently because of it. And Mobb Deep shaped a big part of me musically. Oh yeah, man, I was big into the Mob. Were very, very. I still am to this day, you know. But that was one. I think him and Michael Jackson are two of the ones that hit me the hardest, because I was a big fan of Michael Jackson too. Whatever he did, whatever his allegations were, I constantly go back and forth on that. But in terms of an artist, Michael Jackson was phenomenal. Yeah. And you know, Albert Johnson, or Prodigy, he was only 42 years old too. Yeah. He was only 42. And you know, like I said, he shaped what Mobb Deep, I should say, as a whole, shaped what the kind of music I listen to, and they were a huge influence on me musically from the get-go, along with like Nas, Jay-Z, Eminem. You know, those are a lot of my big influences, and to see him go, especially when he was so young, and I'm sure he had a lot more in him. Yeah. It's a shame, man. That one hit me really, really hard.
Well, and especially like a lot of these hip hop artists, they do have these conditions. They are just starting to talk about. 'Cause I mean, you know, Prodigy was one of these thug life artists. Like Tupac is best known for that kind of thing, but you know, Mobb Deep they were hardcore. Some was a gangsta.
They were the epitome of what people consider New York rap.
Yeah. And you didn't talk about your vulnerabilities in that like they do now. More and more now. I mean, I've seen this transformation in Eminem. He's talking about his mental health issues. He's talking about depression. He'd hint at it about how crazy he was and everything like that, you know, in his early albums. But now he's actually exploring it, and artists, I mean, I'm a big fan of Madchild out on west coast of Canada. Amazing rapper. But he gets in depth about his mental health and addiction struggles. But that's new. Showing weakness back in the day was not part of the aesthetic.
It is kind of, there is some truth to that, because I didn't know. I wouldn't say I've known him. Well, no, you know who actually outed, or maybe not outed, but he was one of the ones who called him out on his sickle cell, was actually Tupac. Ironically, Tupac, when they were beefing with Tupac, he actually said something about Prodigy. He's like, you know, you don't seem well. He like kind of mocked him. He was like, you got that sickle cell, you don't seem well. So you know, but yes, you're right. It wasn't something that was discussed until fairly recently. You know, now I think also too, because a lot of these rappers are getting older. I think it may be the reason why too, that you're finding out about health issues, because you know, when they were younger, even if they had the health issues, then maybe they didn't even give a shit about them. You know what I'm saying? Whereas when you get older, it's something you have to be more aware of.
I think also now there's actually money, and so these guys it's a different kind of hustle. Yeah, there's an actual they can openly explore hip hop as an art form, as opposed to it kind of being this mass therapy session in and of itself. You know, I mean, everybody, especially a band like Public Enemy, not a band, a group, but a group like Public Enemy, everybody identifies with those songs in a different way. And you think, oh, they're so out there. They're so like in your face. How could you possibly find layers of meaning in a Public Enemy track? But they're there. You know, I know that my relationship with a lot of these tracks has evolved as I have gotten older. I mean, Nas, I think, is a brilliant lyricist. But they are now, because, you know, guys like Jay-Z, even guys like Puffy, they're in the boardrooms now.
Yes.
And so they can protect these guys so they can be vulnerable. They don't have to be the alpha dog all the time. They're addressing, you know, the violence in these communities that, you know, took Tupac too soon, and they're empowered to provide alternatives through music, through the arts, to the next generation coming up. And that's an element of the whole community structure of hip hop. The importance to these areas that people treat as, oh, bad and crime ridden and everything like that. I grew up in one of those neighborhoods in Toronto, and okay, they're not the safest, but you know what else we had? We had badass food. We had amazing music. Everywhere you turn around, there's culture, street art, you know, flea market shopping, where you find this awesome stuff. Now, me going in there would be considered cultural appropriation, but we're all from the hood back then. But we also learned a healthy dose of respect for each other, and everybody makes fun of sort of the hip hop respect with no T, but it's a real thing. And I think people don't realize how much hardcore hip hop was actually about not just respect for others, but finding respect for yourself. Because these were artists struggling to find that, and they were kind of almost doping their way through it while they were spitting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that people don't necessarily understand. Like, people can connect to an Eminem track, oh, I'm pissed off at my mom. They can connect to that. But there's so much more. And, I mean, these artists were... the rappers of the 90s, they built stuff that I don't think they're necessarily getting credit for.
Because rap wouldn't be there without them, bro. A lot of people consider the golden era of rap the 90s. And if it wasn't for that foundation that was laid, you know, then we could go back into when rap was formulated, and obviously that started rap, and obviously rap wouldn't be here now without that. But rap, I think rap hit astronomical heights in the 90s, you know, and if it wasn't for what like Mobb Deep and Nas and Jay-Z and Cool G Rap and you know, for what they did, and Rakim, Biggie,
Rakim,
how did I miss Biggie? Jesus Christ. For what they did, and how not even mainstream, but how much they brought in sales, and how they made the mainstream industry realize how formidable rap was, that we wouldn't have now, the, you know, rap being as pop as it is now, and have it be as profitable as it is now without these guys. And I think that's too, it was nice to see, in a weird way, places like CBS and other mainstream news sites cover Albert Johnson's, their Prodigy's death, because Mobb Deep was never like a multi-platinum selling group, you know. I mean, they went gold, and you know, they definitely, you know, they made money, but they weren't like, you know, at like a Drake level, you know, or a Nas level, or a Jay-Z level in terms of commercial success. So to see that him covered, you know, granted for a bad thing, but to see his passing covered by major was good, because it kind of shows that even the mainstream industry knows what their contributions to hip hop were, even though they didn't have the numbers in terms of sales to back it up, you know. And that I thought was really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's respect again. It's nice to see these guys getting credit. I mean, the unsung heroes, I think, of hip hop of the 90s were the producers. You know, guys like Dr. Dre, guys like Dogchild. I'm blanking on some of the. I mean, will.i.am, before he kind of stepped out with Black Eyed Peas. These guys are so consistent in terms of hit making. Missy Elliott on the production side, although that's moving into the next decade a little bit. Raw talents in their own right. Like, they're doing incredible things with samples and backbeats. I mean, I remember when Jay-Z started experimenting with those samples, and everybody made fun of it. Oh, you're stealing music. Can't you write your own lick? All that stuff. There was this whole war between rockers and rappers. And then, of course, Aerosmith and Run DMC broke down those boundaries with Walk This Way, where Aerosmith's like, look, we're going to do a live sample, right? And now that would be considered a feature now. But yeah, it was because they didn't have music lessons. A big thing now is you're seeing rappers play instruments. And that wasn't something they could afford back then. They used to call rap, the beats from the streets, because you could get out there. All you needed was a microphone. You didn't need a 3-piece band. You didn't need all this equipment. You had a microphone. And back in the days of beatboxing, your buddy might have been beatboxing, or did your own beatbox.
Or a lot
of
the sample concept came from the fact where they would just play a record on a turntable and and loop something on there, and that's where that's how a lot of it started too. Yeah, and sampling was dismissed as a form of art, as a form of transformative art, until some of these songs, started charting on the pop charts. And, we tipped our hat to gangster rap, but, popcorn artists like Will Smith, and I know that's a pejorative that's kind of been reclaimed, but, Will Smith in his Lost and Found track, first ever rap Grammy, Fresh Prince. And you needed that to have, blanking on his name now, the guy who won Artist of the Year recently. And he's strictly a digital artist, strictly a YouTube guy. Oh, wow. I don't even know.
Blanking on his name. But, you needed guys like that to kind of pave the way. And that, I think, when rap got a Grammy category, that was when they started to be able to make some real money. Because that was the mark of legitimacy in the mainstream, And I mean, God, we used to have fights over lyrical content, because I used to work for a music station in the 90s into the 2000s. So, in this age where it was becoming not just music, but this kind of audio visual, like short film phenomenon. I actually did a documentary on hip hop that got nominated for some documentary awards and things like that, where we interviewed rappers that talked about the fact that they were borrowing tropes from the heavy metal videos they were seeing, but they were making it their own. And it was a source of frustration when it got accused of all the things video games are accused of now: misogyny and violence and, unhealthy lifestyles and corrupting our children and all that stuff. Those guys were the ones taking those hits back in the early 90s. But the youth of that time, that music spoke to them in the way that video games are speaking to the youth of today. And part of that slander is part of that. And I think that 10 years from now, the same way Barack Obama now is proudly, I listen to Jay-Z in the White House, I think 10 years from now, there's going to be a president who has that PlayStation, that Xbox, or even better, a PC game hooked up. And there's a gamer in the White House. It will be the same thing. You will have that watershed moment. And the thing I like, I mean, I'm a huge Nicki Minaj fan.
Are you
and
really?
People go, really? Because there aren't many places, there's not many people who can still shock me. The way that the people, she is raw in ways that I don't think any dude can do anymore, because there aren't the taboos, right? Those all got knocked down in the 90s and the 2000s.
Even before the 90s, you could say, too.
Yeah, but there was still some pretty shocking content. I mean,
I think if there's
really raw.
I think if there's anything left to be shocked at with dudes, I think Eminem kind of, dried all those wells up.
Yeah, he kind of ate the soggy biscuit on shock rap. There really hasn't been anything since then. But, I think Nicki Minaj has been able to piss off the pearl clutchers and start those social debates, right? I mean, that was the big thing. People who weren't young people at the time, they don't remember the consternation that some of these, there were PTA meetings, and was it Tipper Gore that wanted to ban it all?
I believe so.
Yeah. But it's the same thing that's happening with gaming. And I mean, only people like Nicki Minaj can create those discussion points in the way that those old tracks did. I mean, do you remember when Jay-Z was this thug?
Yeah, you're going back to 96, pre or even before then.
Yeah, I mean, now nobody would think of Jay-Z. He's the respectable rapper. He's the clean guy now, right?
Well, he had to change his image because, I mean, when you're worth over $500 million, you can't really say you're about that life still, Yeah,
but without Jay-Z, there'd be no Rihanna.
He hired her, right? Because he was the president of Def Jam, and I think that was one of his choices that he brought on. Yeah.
Well, he also said, because I mean, Replay de Pawn was one of her demo tracks, and he says, "We do not hire one-hit artists here. I need 2 more songs as strong as this one," because he didn't want to create disposable. He wanted talent. He wanted to cultivate talent. He wanted to work with artists. Because, I mean, he clearly saw all the people body count literally and figuratively, not just the people who were literally gunned down, the people who, turned to drugs, addiction, depression, all because they had a couple of big hits. You don't make any real money until like your 3rd album in music because the publisher and your manager take all of it, unless you have some astronomical tour that you get a piece from. But like he didn't want to burn these people out. He wanted to create stars, and he made sure that she didn't have that one massive song, that there were some legs to her career. And I mean, she's one of the best branded artists out there. She gets designer fashion ads, and people don't think anything of that now, but to see essentially a hip hop artist, like the euphemism is urban artists, in a Versace ad, holy shit. I remember the first time I saw that, I was just like, I'm glad I got to see that. That's a sea change.
Yeah, I don't have an interest in her music, but yeah, I mean, I could.
No, I don't.
She
either.
almost, she kind of took over. She kind of took the baton from Little Kim. Little Kim used to do that.
Yeah, she's definitely
I don't know what the hell.
more of a. She's also kind of that place that kind of Salt and Pepper and TLC and groups like that. I think there's a lot of Left Eye Lopez in Rihanna. She deliberately like sings through her nose.
It's a very unique in terms of when a Nicki Minaj song comes on, and that is, even though I have no interest in her music, is one thing I will say is that it's a good marketing tool, because you could have your eyes closed and be half asleep, and even if you don't like Nicki Minaj, when a song comes on the radio, like, oh, that's Nicki Minaj. You know what I'm saying?
But you also catch yourself with those little sub hooks she puts in her stuff, little things like, dope dee dope dee dope dee dope, things like that. You catch yourself humming that. It is catchy.
Works, yeah. That's beyond just rap music. That's just a good music, just marketing in general. If you have
that's pop. Now we're talking pop,
pop.
As opposed
if you have something
rap.
catchy and pop, people know you, and that's it's like that's as important as Coca-Cola having a catchy visual ad or having a logo.
It's so funny though that pop is this dirty word now, though, because I mean the black artists of the jazz and blues era would have killed to be pop acts. They weren't allowed to be. They, white people had to re-record their songs for white audiences because they didn't mix.
I think
it's so funny how things change.
I think with the thing that, and it's a valid concern, is that what rap is, and it's not even a racial thing, it's just what rap is becoming very diluted by pop. and it's not even that, like, look, I'm not one of those dudes who's like, though rap was only good in the 90s and that's it. I want to go back to 1994 and just live there forever. You know, because that I think is stupid too. I think there's a lot of music back then that was dumb and dated, and you listen to it now and it's like,
electronica?
Or even some of the hip hop too. I mean, there was corny hip hop back then, and you have to evolve and you have to change. But I will say that when there's some music that I hear that they consider rap, that there's nothing rap about it, and that's what I think what people have issue with, is that it's not
I feel that way about Drake.
The thing that bothers me about Drake is that I actually thought Drake was on his first stuff, like in 2011 that I heard. Whenever, I'm not a fan of Drake, so if he came out before then, like, don't run me over, I'm sure, in the comment section. But I'm saying, like, first time I heard Drake was in 2011, and I actually kind of liked it. I'm like, oh, this dude could sing a little bit too. Now it's just he's just on some other shit that I can't follow. I'm not. Hey, if you like Drake, more power to you. I just can't. His newer stuff with that, like, hybrid singing and it's just not my thing.
See, I mean, Drake is not for us. The best description I heard of Drake is he is the soundtrack for other people's lives.
Okay.
And if you're a hip hop fan with these, deeply personal, challenging tracks, Drake is not going to be for you. But that's fine. Drake can be for somebody else. The nice thing is we can have a Drake, and then we can have, I'm trying to think, there really isn't the comparable, like, even like a 50 Cent. There's no, gangster rap has really sort of had its day. I can't think of, because it got replaced by sort of conscious rap. That was the rap that didn't make any money. Now, I'm trying to think of who would be considered like a gangster rap artist now.
It's that's kind of faded. I mean, there's behind, not underground, I guess you could say, but in the independent scene, you see more of that, but in terms of like mainstream,
stuff like grime in the UK,
mainstream,
and stuff like that.
Like, you won't see, I'm thinking of, like, when I think of underground, I'm thinking of like Cool G rap, I guess you could consider underground now, like Ill Bill, Necro, and there's other people that I have a whole list of them, but they're not coming to my head at the moment.
Have you listened to any of this is the closest thing I can think of to gangster rap. If you listen to any of the Brit Hop by Arab Londoners, that is the closest thing to gangster rap now. Some of that stuff is raw. It's good. There's some really good hip hop in the UK right now.
Is there really?
Yeah.
See, I'm not even sure what's
astoundingly good.
Actually, one thing I got to say about Drake is that I want to make sure before he did. One thing I got to give him respect for is he did actually pay his respects to Prodigy too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting, man. We'll end it with this: is that it's good to see even the mainstream showing respect to Prodigy, because he, like I said, Mobb Deep was even though like they didn't have the commercial success as a lot of their peers, they were part of the reason why hip hop is where it is. And to see a lot of people come forward and pay respects to them is a really good thing. We actually made this into a topic we weren't even going to. But
I want to talk about it because I knew it was important to you, and screw it, people can stop and rewatch this whenever they want.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a cool thing, and I'm glad to see that a lot of people are paying attention. That's why I want to talk about it too, because that was a big Mobb Deep, like I said, was a big musical influence to me as well. But again, guys, this is episode 11 of the Rich and 11, if I could talk today, of the Rich and Red podcast. We will be back next week once again. We may be changing up the format a little bit. Don't want to talk about that too much yet, but we may be changing up how we record this, and got to get some issues behind the scenes technically worked out before. We're going to try it this week, but then it would have been a train wreck that exploded in multiple angles. So yeah, that would have been disastrous, even with the faster internet.
Funny.
It would have been funny. Maybe we should have tried it because it would have been entertaining. But for the live stream, it would have been fun. But for the people who actually wanted to just listen on Podbean or iTunes or Google Play Music, they would have been pretty annoyed. So
burn.
Yeah, so we'll hopefully get it. This will actually sound a hell of a lot better this week, though, because Liana and I are recording on Audacity. we're not depending on Aver, and so. And we
hope. I'm not sure about my settings here. I've been, this might be a bit rough, but fingers crossed.
It'll still be a hell of a lot better than what we had. So even if it is rough is still rough is better than like it. It sounded like I was talking on a telephone last week with a jet engine behind me.
Because of the compression.
Yeah, and all the shit I had to do to salvage that. So, all right, guys, we'll see you next week, and thank you once again for tuning in. Have a good one.